Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Research Workplan. I hope you all are doing well and keeping safe. My name is Anzal Rehman, and I'm one of the founding members of the Emirates Collaboration of Residents in Emergency Medicine. That's ECREM for short.
Hey guys, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Sania, one of the founders and director of research at ECREM.
Thank you, Sania. We wanted to thank you all for joining us and taking time out of your day for this first session under the evidence-based medicine grand rounds. That's the EBM grand rounds series. And this is the research work plan. So you might be wondering what research work plan is, but essentially you can find out on our website as well. The research work plan is designed as a modular series of lectures that altogether creates a sort of roadmap to conducting scientific research. It's got content tailored towards emergency medicine residents in the UAE. However, it's pretty generalizable to all national and international physicians, residents, medical students, and interns interested in navigating research from concept to reality.
So as you may have read from our brochures, this initiative is made possible thanks to a collaboration with the team over at Best Evidence in Emergency Medicine, that is BEEM. So BEEM is an international emergency medicine knowledge translation program created by EM physicians for EM practitioners. And it sort of has the mission and vision of being the most valid, reliable, and unbiased global source of current clinically relevant patient-centered evidence for EM physicians to provide like the best clinical evidence out there to optimize patient care. We are incredibly grateful and proud to host some amazing physician researchers from the UAE and Canada who have put forth an invaluable effort to produce the content within this series.
Hey everyone, this is Mohammad, a board member at ECREM, and it's my pleasure to host this first module of EBM Grand Rounds. Few housekeeping notes before we get started. Please note that this session is being recorded and it will be posted on the ECREM website, so you can refer to it later for the completion of the modules. To keep the background noise minimized, you will be muted throughout the session. So if you have any questions, just post them on the chat box. Make sure you chat to everyone, not only to the host, so the moderator can keep track of your questions and then present them at the question and answer session towards the end of the module. If you have any technical issues or anything, you can text me directly, the host, on the chat box again. Finally, I hope you enjoy this session and you have an informative and engaging module.
Thank you, Tasneem. Without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker for the day, Dr. Suneel Upadhye. So Dr. Suneel is an associate professor of emergency medicine and health research methods, evidence and impact, that is HEI, at McMaster University. He's a founding member of the Best Evidence in Emergency Medicine, that is BEEM, since 2005. He's the inaugural research lead for the EM researchers of Niagara, EM RON, and Niagara Research Campus of McMaster University Medical School. And he also works clinically as a staff physician within the Niagara Health Emergency Departments. He works as a guidelines methodologist with the Canadian Association of Emergency Medicine and Society for Academic Emergency Medicine Guidelines for Reasonable and Appropriate Care in the ED, that is SEAM GRACE groups. Finally, he curates the emergencyguidelines.ca website, which was launched in Jan 2021. It was relaunched. His personal interests include jazz music, scuba diving and scuba medicine, and playing golf, which he says poorly.
Hello. Thanks for joining us today on the first session of ECREM Evidence-Based Medicine Grand Rounds, a collaboration between ECREM and the Best Evidence Emergency Medicine BEEM program. My name is Dr. Suneel Upadhye. I'm an associate professor of emergency medicine and health research methodology, evidence and impact at McMaster University. And I'm going to open the series with a short discussion about why do research in emergency medicine. So we'll be covering these questions. why research in emergency medicine. We're going to brainstorm about how to get ideas and topics for research with examples from my personal and other emergency medicine research programs around the world. Finally, we're going to talk about identifying mentors and supervisors for research so you have the best chance of success as a student or a trainee undertaking your research career. By way of disclosures, I work as a guideline methodologist for both the Canadian Association of Emergency Physicians and the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine's GRACE projects, which is the Guidelines for Reasonable Appropriate Care and Emerge. I'm a founding member of the BEEM program back in 2005 under the leadership of Dr. Andrew Worcester, who you'll meet later in the series. I'm also the inaugural research lead for the Emergency Medicine Researchers of Niagara, which is an affiliate of McMaster Medical School in Niagara region, since 2017. And finally, I've created and curate a website called emergencyguidelines.ca, which houses and summarizes key guidelines for emergency medicine practice worldwide. So why get started in research? You can see the career pathway on the right-hand side here. You could do some research as a medical student, then eventually in your residency programs as junior and senior residents. And if you're willing to commit for the long haul, you can then become a fellow and get formal research training and credentialing with graduate degrees as a master's or PhD. And much of this is outlined in the SAEM's Reason for Research document that was just published this past year. What are the benefits of choosing a research career in academic medicine? Well, there's plenty for yourself. You're participating in the creation of new knowledge, which is always a good thing for yourself and your peers. You can get research and funding support for yourself and your institutions. There's always new learning to be had both in clinical care and research methodology as you undertake on these projects. There's a freedom to pursue whatever areas of interest that tickle your fancy and you're interested in advancing the field. Definitely improvements in patient care are one of the end targets that we definitely want to see coming out of all research activities. Certainly reductions in stress and burnout, because you're not just burning clinically the whole time, and you get some opportunities to get distracted in some areas of interest for yourself. Developing future research experiences and toolkits for other people to follow you, or trainees if you end up becoming a supervisor, is always a beneficial outcome of participating with a career in research. And then engaging with mentorship amongst your peers, amongst your students and trainees. And then finally, academic development for yourself within your program. Perhaps you're in a university setting where progress and promotion from associate to full professor and everything matters. And the research opportunities certainly allow for creating that kind of progression in your career. So what does the research industry look like? This was reviewed in Lancet in 2013. There's about $160 billion US invested annually in research. So it's a very big business worldwide. Some criticisms of research, though, by some skeptics like John Ioannidis and what have you, notice that about 85% of current clinical research is rather inefficient and maybe even wasteful because of 4 reasons. They ask irrelevant research questions, they have inappropriate study designs and methods, inaccessible research reports, so the publications that come from them don't make it to the mainstream and change practice, and they may be biased or not even clinically meaningful, which is unfortunate. You don't want to waste your time, both as a researcher and as a reader, reading such material if it's not going to move the needle on patient care. So what are some basic considerations as you undertake your research project you should think about? There's the so what test. If you can state your question and say the answer is like, so what difference does it make? Then, so if they don't have your project doesn't have a useful or important clinical meaning result, then it shouldn't be done. Similarly, is the question answerable? It may be a very good question, but you may not have an opportunity or the wherewithal with resources, process, what have you, in your emergency department to actually answer that question. So again, you shouldn't pursue that question if it can't be answered. So why do research from the patient and public perspectives? So it helps to address clinical equipoise in disease management. So if you're not just sure what to do with regards to when you're taking care of a patient with a specific disease, then it helps answer those questions in a research environment. It might help inform public policy decision-making. The last 2 years have been a clear demonstration in COVID pandemic worldwide, how research is helping to guide COVID decision-making with regards to treatments, vaccines, travel, and what have you. And then you can also look at examining disparities in care. So this is where disadvantaged people or vulnerable populations may have differential access to emergency medicine care. There's different social determinants of health in terms of poverty, age, mental health, and a variety of other things that may create inequities in care, and research is a great way to address and overcome those. In your own workplace, what's the benefit of doing research? Well, you can certainly work on typical things like improving operational workflow in the ED and making sure you don't have overcrowding problems. That's a common theme of research. Creating and implementing new technologies or drugs in healthcare if they're relevant to what you do in emergency medicine practice. Optimizing educational strategies for different providers like your physicians, your nurses, and what have you, your medical students, whatever. Certainly, there's a very little done in emergency medicine with regards to exploring resource utilization and the costs of care. So economic evaluations of the kind of care we provide in emergency medicine is very untapped territory for research going forward, yet critically important for the institutions you work in and the provinces or whatever pay system you work in. Informing institutional decision-making. So the kind of research you do may have an impact across your entire hospital or your region of hospitals or emergency departments, and may inform kind of how to do optimal practice there. And finally, institutional credibility and brand building. So if you're an institution that's known for doing good research and what have you, it increases your brand, increases your hospital becomes famous. And if you're a contributor to that, it may lead to increased funding in your emergency department for more research activities or clinical operations. And that's happened in our workplace in Niagara as well. And of course, ultimately, it's the individual person. So what's in it for me if I wanted to get into a research career? So there is personal satisfaction with the intellectual exercise and endeavors of engagement and what have you, and publishing articles. It definitely will improve your individual clinical skills and teamworking skills, because if you're researching how to do well with taking care of your patients and work with your coworkers, you will do that in real time during your merge shifts. Improving critical appraisal skills. If you know how to design and execute research, you certainly will learn how to critically appraise research when it's published from other authors in the emergency medicine literature. Certainly future career building. If you see yourself not wanting to do clinical care for the entire 20, 30, 40, 50 years of your life, and you want to switch into academic tracks or research tracks or whatever, that's a great way to start building your career early. And then finally, if you're competing for jobs and fellowships and stuff like that, I mean, there's no doubt that having a strong research background will help your CV and the strength of your application if you're competing for a job that is in high demand. So all of this helps. So who are the people and the team members that are going to get involved? Certainly in your clinical groups, your ED physicians, your nurses, your allied health professionals, even your clerical staff might be of some value, or porters or whatever. If it impacts your research, you should involve all of them in your projects. Learners for sure, including students, residents, and fellows. There are certainly special populations like pediatrics, geriatrics, vulnerable populations, including the homeless, those in poverty with low socioeconomic situations, gender, perhaps race, sexual identity, and what have you, indigenous peoples, and depending on what country you work in, if that's a barrier to care, then these are all things that should be investigated, and you should have these people involved with your teams. First and foremost, you need to get a good mentor, and we're going to come back on that in a little while. And finally, I would highly encourage you to think about the importance of public and patient engagement in your projects. So why PPI, public patient involvement? So it's critical to really get these end users, patients, caregivers in your research projects and development. They give you a lot of feedback and importance about priorities for them, what are important outcomes for them, and what have you. It explores the principles of experience-based co-design. So there's a literature on this, and we can get into this later in the series if needed. Maintains a focus on priorities, so patient relevant outcomes. So, sometimes clinicians focus on certain types of things that they think is important for research outputs and projects, but it has nothing to do with what the patients care about. So it is important to establish patient values and preferences about what they care about, and then design your projects around that. Finally, you may want to build in some equity considerations into your project plan to make sure that there's no particular population of people that you serve that end up disadvantaged because of the research that you're undertaking. Finally, a lot of North American and European grants under governments and other public health agencies, they require now a PPI component of it. And sometimes journals are going to ask about, did you get patients and caregivers or the public involved with your project execution, and how's it reported? And we can talk about that later. And if it was present, it makes your publication stronger because it makes it more trustworthy because you engaged your partners in a meaningful way. You didn't use them as tokens, but you actually engaged them properly using EBCD to help guide your research and complete your program. So as I've emphasized over and over again, the end game of all of this is optimizing patient care. This is why we became healthcare professionals and doctors and nurses and all such things. And this is who we take care of. So this is the job. It's at the end of it all, it's about taking good care of patients. So shifting gears now, where do we get our ideas for research? A couple sayings here. Discovery is said to be an accident meeting a prepared mind. So what that means is, as a researcher, you should always be ready to look at opportunities to see where you can change gears or shift your research program. The outbreak of the COVID pandemic in the spring of 2020 was ideal. I mean, many research programs ended up shifting gears instantly when the pandemic was declared and COVID was appearing in many countries around the world. Another way of thinking about how to get research ideas is the best way to have a good idea is to have a lot of ideas. Career researchers and all such things generally are always attuned to some things they hear about or read about or what have you, discuss with their peers and colleagues and say, hey, there's an idea that I might be able to use in my own setting and do a project around that. So some common pitfalls that this is from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada's research primer from 2011. We'll loop back on that, and it's listed in the reference as well. So these are the common pitfalls in research. We're only going to focus on a couple of them in this session. So the first mistake you could ever make is pick a topic that you don't care about, because if you don't care, nobody else cares. The project will not move forward. You'll have too many distractions on your time, which you already have anyway, and you're just not going to prioritize getting that project done. So don't do it. Okay. And then not being able to leverage that idea into a focused answerable question using PICO parameters. And you're going to hear about that later in the series as well. So the American College of Emergency Physicians, ACEP, has this research primer, and they talk about, important areas of research for emergency medicine some years back, but they apply still today. So, how to do the actual clinical practice and take care of patients with, health services and what have you. Contributing to interdisciplinary collaborative research. So maybe you have interests in cardiology, emergency cardiology, so you want to do some projects with your cardiology partners, or infectious disease or critical care. You want to implement sepsis bundles and all such things. So all of these things generally benefit from having interdisciplinary and collaborative relationships with other departments in your hospital. Medical information and clinical informatics is a growing field as most hospitals now shift to electronic health records. Methods to assess outcomes of emergency care at different levels, pre-hospital, within hospital, post-discharge, all of that stuff is there to take and to be developed. And then, of course, getting grant support and other funding sources to build these programs and make your institution a research powerhouse. The settings we've talked about before. There's people who are interested in doing pre-hospital and emergency medical systems, so EMS, ambulance type stuff. So you can start research into processes, operations. You can do disease-specific research, trauma, sepsis bundles, or sepsis recognition in the pre-hospital setting, STEMI, so ST elevation MI recognition in the pre-hospital setting, and redirecting people to cath labs right away from the field. And these are the types of projects that have been going on for quite a number of years, quite successfully. Once they're actually in the department, there's anything from arrival to triage through disposition. All of those processes can be researched either from a flow perspective or from a disease-specific entity if you want to be exploring and researching all that stuff. And there's a growing need to have research activities and information around what happens to patients once they leave the emergency department. So after discharge, what are their admissions outcomes? What's their recidivism rates? So how often do they bounce back? What are the discharge materials? Are they legible? Are they understood by the patients, and follow-ups and so on? So all of these things can be researched depending on what your area of interest is. So another list of found online about how to generate topics. This is pretty straightforward. Review your own learning in your notes and your own clinical experiences in the subjects of interest, whatever your topic is. Ask a mentor or supervisor if they need an assistant, because if you can't generate your own ideas, maybe you can join on with some other group that's underway. Brainstorm with your coworkers and potential collaborators about ideas of interest for all of you if you're going to create a small working team. You can review the scientific literature that's relevant to your research, your interests, either within your field or outside of your field, and see if you can adapt it in. Find and talk to engaged stakeholders in the field and workplace, or even your senior residents will be good to give ideas, or you can perhaps take over their projects and continue them once they finish and graduate, so that there's a legacy plan for different projects to move forward year after year in your residency programs. You can join an established research group if it's already there in the institution you work within. You can engage with marginalized communities. We have some of our residents who really care about specific areas of marginalized care and equity issues. So they do research in these areas because they're passionate about it. Find a specific local need that requires solutions. Again, COVID gave lots of opportunities for, patient flow, screening, triage, special wards in the hospitals and all such things, and that's ongoing. You can then take your problem, construct a problem tree or a mind map, and there's software to help you with all of these things, just to really map out what your project is going to fall into or your idea is going to fall into. And then there are online communities and blogs that if you're a sepsis researcher and you want to join sepsis communities on social media or other blogs, then there's lots of ideas and cross-fertilization of thoughts to create projects and research ideas there. Alternatives, forge your collaborations, communities of practice, both real locally. For example, in the Emirates, you have 5 Emirates that might want to collaborate as a COP. And then beyond, the entire Middle East could be a digital community of practice or whatever it is. So lots of opportunities there. So let's get into these a little bit. First and foremost, most people get their ideas by just doing the job and then figuring out, if I could do this better, how would I do this better to take care of the next patient that has this? So one of our projects we're doing in Niagara, for example, is we're changing how we take care of patients with uncomplicated skin abscesses. We see a lot of them and they are a bit time consuming, and there's antibiotic stewardship issues around that, all such. So we're creating new quality improvement clinical pathways to figure out what's the most time and cost efficient manner of treating such abscesses in the ED. That's one of our projects. You can go through the medical literature in yours or other specialties, like I said. You can build on previous work that's either worked in your field or in your institution with your own program, so-called legacy projects that keep going to extend further knowledge development, or you can take other places and adapt it into your workplace. I was a fan back in the day, and I still am a little bit of what I call redo research. So if you reproduce a study from another environment into your environment, would you get the same results? Is it generalizable? So when I was a second-year resident a lifetime ago, back in 1997, I found a small little article about appropriate administration of aspirin in the emergency department with patients with suspected acute coronary syndromes and ST elevation MIs. So I did a simple little chart review, created inclusion-exclusion criteria, what have you, and we reviewed a bunch of charts, and we found that there was a 45% miss rate of patients not getting aspirin for an acute coronary syndrome in the ED back in 1997. Now, my methodology was weak. I didn't have a good mentor to help me how to do this stuff, but this was a huge finding, surprisingly to me, in our hospital, and our quality people and our cardiologists and our emerged senior leadership, they went crazy over this one. I got some research awards out of it, and I presented it at one of our national meetings and what have you. So I got a lot of traction out of this very simple question. And it was redo research. I did what somebody else had done in their emerge and found that we were not giving aspirin very well for acute coronary syndromes. And we, used that information to change it and fix it. Other place to get research idea, if you have personal interests, experiences in clinical education work, quality improvement, public or vulnerable populations, public health, these are all passion projects that, you should be able to pursue and find people to work with and collaborate with and mentors to lead you through that. Okay. Joining a group of established researchers. Again, we've mentioned that before, and I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment. Local clinical problems or population health priorities. COVID is everybody everywhere, but in your own community, you may have specific needs that need to be addressed with your hospital partners or even your public health partners or primary care partners, whatever. So there may be some unique opportunities there about how to address equipoise and create solutions through an appropriate research program. Meetings and conference abstracts, great places to find ideas, meet people, get some, hey, wow, that's a really cool poster. I should do that at home and figure out if I get the same results or similar, different results or whatever it is. So very fertile grounds for generating cool ideas to do research. Finally, if you work in an academic environment where you get a lot of grants, notifications and submission calls for grants in specific topics like COVID, opioid stewardship, indigenous care, whatever the case may be, that may be a place to get some ideas. But by the time those calls usually come around, your idea better be ready, because those grants usually have about a 4 to 6 week turnaround time once they're announced. So your idea must be very crystallized and you must be ready to go and just submit something right away. So that involves some preparation. So this is one project that a couple of our students and Dr. Strobel, the lead author here, were very passionate about, which was homeless care in the emergency department in Niagara region in Ontario, which is where I work in Canada. And they found different reasons why people were accessing the emergency departments, factors involved with homelessness and ED usage, and then follow-up for after discharge and how to connect them with services. So it ended up leading to a randomized trial called HELPS. So it's a peer support program where they engaged with somebody who had been previously homeless, who had used the ER substantially during their time as a homeless person. And they trained them up and gave them some supports about, now they were a liaison within our departments to find and identify similarly homeless people and act as a peer support to say, okay, this is how you get connected to housing. This is how you get connected to medication coverages, financial supports, mental health, addiction supports. This was wildly successful. And, we got some local publicity through our newspapers and all such things. And this ended up being a very solid publication for Dr. Strobel and his group, and there's more work going on for that now, because this was a clear win for a vulnerable population for us in our region using peer support. So talk about groups. There's lots of groups around the world. Many of them have various levels of success and what have you. This is a Canadian group that I'm very not envious of, but appreciative of, because they set the bar very high for how to do a good research group. So, back in the day, the godfather of it all is Dr. Ian Steele, and anybody in emergency medicine knows who Ian Steele is. He's the patron saint of clinical decision rules. Back in the 90s and 2000s, he's the architect of the Ottawa ankle rules, the Ottawa knee rules, the Canadian C-spine rule, Canadian CT head rule, and on and on and on. So two of his early disciples, Dr. Jeff Perry and Christian Vaillancourt, they started working under Ian as a mentor, and he guided their careers, and both of them have achieved professor status now, and Ian's a professor emeritus at Ottawa. And Jeff was the architect of the Ottawa subarachnoid hemorrhage rule. Christian does a lot of rules and studies in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. And the next generation now coming up is my friend Venk. I'm not going to bother with his last name. He's the architect of the Canadian Syncope Risk Score. So again, this is a shop that produces clinical decision rules. They do it really well. And the generations of physicians and researchers coming through there pick a new topic and they start going at it. Deborah Eagles, another bright star in Ottawa, is working on geriatric delirium issues and what have you, and coming up with risk scores for that. So this is a great example of a group that focuses on one type of activity, which is developing clinical decision rules, and the people who come through it just follow the recipe, they succeed, and they get personal advancement and institutional advancement and lots of funds and all sorts. So this works, and it's a great model to emulate. Another idea that you can look at, this is somewhat different and new in the last few years, are the Choosing Wisely campaigns that started in the United States and have been sort of moving around the world. We have one in Canada as well. So these are global initiatives to reduce low-value diagnostic testing and inappropriate clinical care that doesn't lead to good patient outcomes, so treatments and what have you. The various specialty organizations create their top 10 recommendation lists, or 5, or whatever the number of recommendations they have, to optimize care for their colleagues, and they use standard evidence-based processes, which are all available online. And then they implement these recommendations into different quality improvement initiatives in local settings and see what happens. So I'm a member of the Canadian CAPE, Choosing Wisely working group, and in 2017 we put our list of the first 5 recommendations for emergency medicine, and then we updated it to 10 in 2019. Now I did a little bit of a check myself, and I've not seen this in the United Emirates, so it'd be interesting to see if this kind of endeavor could be created and adapted or adopted in the UAE. So this is our list. There's just a bunch of top 10 recommendations. 6 of them essentially address unnecessary diagnostic imaging, and 4 of them deal with antibiotic stewardship and inappropriate prescribing for things that don't need antibiotics. And similarly, the imaging ones discourage routine imaging in low-risk situations where the patient doesn't need x-rays or CT scans or what have you. So the list is there. Happy to share it with you at another time. So what are the next steps that we're going to be undertaking with this list in the new year? So we're going to get a bunch of students to help us with chart reviews for the diagnostic imaging ordering programs for the 6 indications that we have in our list. We're going to look at the frequency of tests that are ordered by each physician, generate a report card for them, and then maybe documentation. Do they actually document some assessment for a clinical decision rule that's appropriate for that patient's chart? So ankles, necks, CT heads, PE risk scores, if you're going to do a chest scan or whatever. Create, again, like I said, report cards back to the practicing physicians. Eventually, we'll come up with new educational strategies to reinforce awareness and usage of these recommendations based on the clinical decision rules that have been well validated in emergency medicine around diagnostic test ordering. And then we'll start QI programs to look at ordering behaviors over time. We'll do repeated plan, do, study, act, so PDSA cycles to monitor improvements. And then we'll change the interventions based on the results we get and whatever it takes to improve uptake. So that's a whole series of quality improvement based on the Choosing Wisely lists that we created a couple years ago. So other things that Choosing Wisely offers, this again in the Choosing Wisely Canada database, there's a toolkit that's available now. This is relatively new since last year on how to avoid giving antibiotics to people who have viral infections, respiratory infections. There's a toolkit on how to avoid unnecessary catheterization for patients in the emergency department, reducing unnecessary blood transfusions from 2 units to 1 based on evidence-based guidelines and such, and then just generally another toolkit on reducing unnecessary ER laboratory testing as well. So these are 4 toolkits available in the Canadian resource base, any of one of which could be a fantastic research activity for us in Canada, and of course adaptable to your environment in the UAE. So there's where you get your kind of sources of ideas and what have you. So the next step is to sort of how to crystallize this into a workable idea. So there's these criteria called FINER. So the mnemonic stands for, is the idea feasible? Is it interesting? Is it novel? Is it ethical? And is it relevant? So you really want to make sure that you answer all these little check boxes to see that you've got a good idea. Okay, it's not a research question yet, but it's an idea that merits moving forward to formulate into a good research question. Then what you do is you use the FINER criteria. You're going to transform this into the typical PCOT question that everybody should be aware of: population, intervention, comparisons, outcomes, and timing. And that's going to be covered in another session, so I'm not going to get into that too far. So FINER to PCOT is how you want to evolve your idea once you've got a great idea. The importance of the research question. Obviously, a good research question is going to lend itself to say, this is the study design we're going to use, right? It should be very specific, unambiguous, and ideally incorporates all of the relevant PCOT elements. We're going to talk about this, like I said, later in a future seminar. And ideally, this is a point where you really want to get involved with a supervisor or mentor who can help you with refining this question and let the study design and the protocol start to evolve as the question starts to crystallize. So this will be the remaining segment, which is on finding supervisors and mentors. So going back to that common research pitfalls checklist we saw before, we initially saw poor ideas or ideas that can't be translated into a research question. This one is finding a research supervisor who's just not passionate about it, or is not going to help you invest the time, invest the effort, and help you through all the different stages of the project, because then you're sort of sabotaging yourself and kind of wasting the other person's time as well. So what is the importance of a mentor? It's critically important. They give you advice, they give you leadership, they give you guidance, they give you moral support, emotional support, whatever you need. It helps you define the focus of your questions in the project. It'll eventually then evolve into designing your project and writing up your study protocols, what have you. Probably help you get through the research ethics board component. Maybe identify funding opportunities if that's relevant for your research. It usually comes later on in your research program, not on your very first project and getting funding. Enhanced collaborations, perhaps they know people that you can collaborate with, or senior residents or other physicians within your department or outside of your department, but in your institution, in your region, or in the virtual community of practice we talked about globally before. So if they know people that can help bring all these people together, build your team and make your project better. This is important. So regular meetings to push your progress and meet your milestones. So timing your research, creating a timeline of when you're going to hit the various milestones is critical, and then meet them. You must meet them, right? Because otherwise your project is going to go off the rails very quickly. Choosing publication venues, they may know when your project is completed as you write up your manuscript, you know, where's the right journal to send this story to, so that, because that's the readership that would be interested in that kind of project that you've just completed. I like to do this at the beginning of a project, actually say, when we finish this, these are our target journals, 3, 4, 5, or whatever it is. So I prioritize them that way. So I get that done at the beginning. You may also conferences, you may want to talk about where you're going to present your work at conferences when they're all done. They may help you with grooming of your career. And, you know, as Ian Steele did for Jeff Perry and Christian and Vank and for Deborah, you know, groom them along the progress and promotion pathway, submit them forward for promotion in their universities and in other opportunities within the country to become a national research chair or institutional chair or whatever it is. So they help you with that. Certainly debriefing and overcoming any barriers or hurdles of success. So a good mentor should be able to take the project before it really gets going and say, okay, you might have problems here, you might have problems there. So here's a barrier, here's a barrier, here's a barrier, here's a facilitator. Now here's a solution for every one of those that we should think about ahead of time so that you don't get stuck as you're going through your project and not potentially meeting your milestones. And it may well be that different projects, depending on the diversity of projects or the nature of how the questions are coming together, you might require multiple mentors, and they may all help you with a different part of each project. And that's okay. It might be like herding cats, so you might have to be careful with how many you have so that you don't have too many people eating at your time and not being able to have meetings and milestones progress with too many cooks in the kitchen, as it were. So just be mindful of such. So what are the key steps of finding a supervisor? So again, the first thing you should do is look at what are your personal goals? What's your priority of this project? What is it you're passionate about and what do you care about? Because it's about what you want to do, and find a mentor and a supervisor to help you, not do what they tell you to do, because sometimes those goals don't meet and then the project will sputter out and fail. You can identify experts in your own workplace who have similar interests or research experience, either within your department, outside your department, again, if you're collaborating within your institution, or you might go to another department and say, look, this is the person who knows this material. I'm going to work with them. You know, as long as you keep your coordination proper and, you know, your program director aware of what you're doing and who you're working with, and it's all fine. You can certainly talk to other trainees within your program or between other programs to say, you know, this is a person I'd like to use as my supervisor. What do you think of him or her? So if somebody asked, you know, what do you think of Dr. Upadhye as a supervisor? They may tell you things like, I know, I'm going to make this up. He's friendly. He's got he knows what he's doing with regards to these types of topics, but he has no idea what he doing with these topics. You know, he's sometimes busy, so may not be able to meet your milestones or your meetings, but other times he's very helpful, helps you write the project and plan everything ahead of time, and whatever. They can say whatever they want about me, and it is what it is, right? What other things can you do? You can look at the expertise of the supervisor themselves. Like, are they a clinical expert in the area you want to research? If they're not, then perhaps you should be looking elsewhere. You know, are they good with study design and methodology for the question that you're about to develop and the idea you want to pursue? Have they had past experiences with these research processes, study designs, topics of interest and whatever, so that you know that they're closers, they can deliver what they need to deliver, and you're about to join them and help you deliver what you want to deliver in terms of completing your project. You know, are they helpful with project management? Are they good writers? Will they help you with good writing? Will they get your publications through and all such? So these are all things you may want to think about when you're auditioning a supervisor, like myself or whoever else you're doing, right? And do they work in an enriching environment? Do you have access to formal education on how to do research activities, workshops, how to do statistical analyses? Is there a network of experts and biostatisticians or ethics people or whatever that you can access so that your chances of planning the early parts of your project and executing through successful steps and completing are optimized? And then finally, matching expectations. I mean, you got to be on the same page in terms of what you think you're going to get out of this project, and not, we've had some ambitious students, for example, say, I want to do a multi-center randomized trial on some esoteric topic in some very rare vulnerable population and group. And we're like, no, you can't. I mean, the likelihood that trainees and residents can pull off randomized trials in a timely fashion on most questions is it's difficult. So student projects tend to be things like, chart review projects, and then maybe systematic reviews and lit reviews, and maybe there's some prospective stuff you can get done, but you're time limited. You have 3, 4, 5 years, whatever you have in your residency, and you have other obligations. So time is a precious commodity. So you have to match your project and your expectations of completing that project with your supervisor appropriately to meet your needs. So what are the productive environments to work in? I mean, obviously, if they have all the right resources in terms of computers, databases, if you're going to do database research, statistical programs to generate outcome measures and tests of significance, what have you, all of that should ideally be there. Interprofessional collaborators to help with those various phases. I've talked about that. Research assistants. We have one research assistant right now in Niagara. We have access to biostatisticians. We have access to grant writers, but we're not big enough yet to have all of that stuff in-house. Dr. Steele's operation in Ottawa has all of this in-house because they've had so much success over the years with the research publications and funding that they've built an operation and that's probably the envy of the world in emergency medicine in Ottawa. Structured teaching and guidance in different research design, that's a bonus. If that exists in your environment and you know how to access it, then it just teaches you at the beginning how to do your program, how to do your research project once you've got your idea falling into place. And then joining a research network. So again, in Canada, we have something called the PERC, which is the Pediatric Emergency Research Consortium, and PCARN is the pediatric equivalent in the United States. So the pediatricians, the emergency pediatricians in Canada, they really have their act together, and they've got this entire research network across Canada that they do all this emerge research work, and they turn out some fantastic stuff. So there's critical care networks available in Canada, not necessarily focused on emergency medicine. Recently, one of our superstars in Vancouver, Dr. Corinne Hull, she's created a new research network and database collaboration on all things COVID relevant to ER care, so diagnostics, treatments, risk stratification, all such things. And there's a whole bunch of people across Canada participating in this database and generating lots of information that's very useful because it's a comprehensive database, and she's brilliant. She knows what she's doing. So it's great when all of us get to participate with people like that. So let's summarize. How do you get going with research? The idea is what you care about. Find a topic that you're passionate about, that's of interest to you, that you're going to pursue, you're going to start, execute, and finish, because if you don't care, nobody else will. So you must care the most, and you must push this along the way to get it done. You can read some articles about similar ideas, focus on the methods and design just to get yourself into the flow of, okay, idea, finer, PICO topic, PICO strategy. So the design of which is now going to just sort of flow from those earlier steps, right? And we're going to cover that in future sessions. Consider the finer criteria for your idea just to make sure it's a good idea, it's a doable idea, like the executable idea is really, really important. Lots of great ideas out there, and none of them can be done. Some of them can't be done. I shouldn't say none. Some of them can't be done in an ER setting, or it's just not practical to do it at the resident level and what have you. Collaborating with other people, with mentors, a mentor or multiple mentors, the reasons which we've talked about already. If that's what it takes to build your team and get your project done, then make it so. And then find that supervisor who will commit to helping you. And it's a commitment from both of you. It's a very important relationship where there's expectations and duties on both sides. And ideally, you should be on the same page and meet them so that your project has the best chance of success. So here's some references that I mentioned to you about the Canadian Royal College Guide, where much of this information came from, and some other resources as you see here. Interesting YouTube video that was created by the McMaster Professional Development Group on how to formulate research questions. You can watch that. The link is there at your convenience. So at this point, I will say thank you very much. We will shift over to the next presentation, and we will have questions and answers thereafter. Thank you. Hope this was useful for you.
Okay. I think I speak for everyone. That was an excellent overview on why research plays such a fundamental role in both our ability not only to interpret information, but also advance into best practices for our patient care in the emergency department. Dr. Suneel, I especially like how you provided examples, ideas, and gold standards off of which new studies may be extrapolated. So here's to hoping that helps some people out there. So let's assume you've decided to go ahead and you've started that research you always wanted to start off, and that project is almost underway. Now you got to gather up a reliable team, like Dr. Suneel said, and to collect your study and get it off the ground. So how do you build that team? So surprise, surprise. Up next, we have an interesting lecture on that topic called team building, delivered today by Dr. Sabrina Berdouk. Dr. Sabrina Berdouk is a consultant emergency physician here in the UAE who has been an associate program director of Emergency Medicine Residency Program at Sheikh Khalifa Medical City in Abu Dhabi. She received her Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland in Bahrain, prior to which she graduated with a degree in nursing at McGill University, as well as a healthcare management degree from the University of Montreal in Canada. She completed her residency training in family and emergency medicine at the University of Toronto and the University of Montreal. She's currently completing her Master's of Education in Health Professions at Johns Hopkins University in the US. And of note, Dr. Berdouk was actively involved in the Canadian Residency Matching Service, or the CARMS, if you know of it, and has taken an active role in teaching medical students and residents at the University of Toronto. Dr. Berdouk has given numerous international talks, has multiple publications, and is active in point-of-care ultrasound, that's POCUS, and has a passion for teaching medical and nursing education. Dr. Berdouk, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're joining us from. I would like to thank the organizers for this initiative. So I would like to thank the Emirates Collaboration of Residents of Emergency Medicine, along with BEEM, for humbling me and for asking me to be part of this research module, as Dr. Suneel and I are doing the first research module. So without further ado, my name is Dr. Sabrina Berdouk. I'm a consultant emergency medicine from Sheikh Khalifa Medical City in Abu Dhabi, the UAE. So I have no conflict of interest and no disclosure. And what does it mean to have no conflict of interest? Well, please stay tuned because this is what we're going to discuss in the talk today. So as Dr. Suneel already touched on it, one of the most fundamental things to think about when you actually will start your research or any project for that matter is your team. Who do you want on your team to be able to, maximize the chances of success? As far as research is concerned, the first thing you have to think about is your supervisors. In your supervisor, you have to ask yourself a few questions. First of all, what are your goals? What do you want to master? Do you want to master a research method? Or do you want to pursue a certain area of interest? Do you want a supervisor that has expertise in a certain area that you're interested in? Or are you looking for a research process or the research process is actually more important to you? Then in that case, you would need to find a supervisor that will provide you with an environment for superior research training. Let's say you decide to pursue the ideal training environment. Then you need to scan your department and you have to see who in the department has the ability to publish, and not only publish high quality evidence. If you're actually looking for the actual methodology and training, then you have to brace yourself, because this is really a competitive field. Researchers and supervisors who have published extensively and who have a robust methodology are usually very, very competitive. It's very hard actually to get close to them. So in this case, you really have to brace yourself and actually have a strong CV to be able to give yourself the best chance to be part of the team of that supervisor. You have to make sure that you have to see that your supervisor is somebody who is available, that will actually oversee your work and has the skills and experience as far as the methodology is concerned, as far as conducting research, and you have to look at the track record of publications. In addition, you have to have ideally your supervisor should have access to resources, because you're going to need office space, you're going to need research tools, you're going to need access to database, you're going to need access to study participants, and of course recruitment possibilities. So you'd like to attach yourself to a supervisor that actually has those resources. In addition, you want to have a supervisor which is, excuse me for the term, anal about deadlines, because it's really, really important that your supervisor actually aware and is mindful of your deadlines and actually is able to ensure that you stay on track with your desired project milestones. And that person that should be receptive to your queries and unexpected obstacles that require their troubleshooting. Now, first and foremost, you want a supervisor that is passionate and enthusiastic about the work, because research is long. Research sometimes can be very thankless. So it's really important to have somebody who really has the passion and they do it really from the heart. That's something you have to keep in mind. Now, in the literature there, I found a bit of what we call a supervisor checklist. So how do you find a supervisor, and how do you find, what are the things that you have to look into? Again, you want to ask other trainings and students what their experience has been with that particular person, because you want to make sure that, it's a good fit. You want to have somebody who's got research process experience. The supervisor you have in mind understand the challenges one faces in research. Can they offer practical tips for troubleshooting any problems that might arise? So usually the current students and the former trainees are able to answer those questions. You want a supervisor that knows what they're talking about. Do they know the topic area very well? Do they know the application of the topic area? And can they find the link between your topic area and other topics? So it's really important to have somebody who knows what they're talking about. You want to have somebody who's got some kind of methodological expertise. Make sure that your supervisor, that the supervisor you have in mind is really well versed in the approach. And the chat you will need for your project, ranging from laboratory statistics to biostatistics. Does your supervisor have a funding track record? Because usually if you're able to secure 1 or 2 grants, you're able to secure more grants, and research really needs money. So you want to make sure that your supervisor has a track record for securing funding. And finally, you want somebody who's published. It's very easy to see who's published and what kind of track record they have as far as publications are concerned. PubMed, just check on PubMed and you will see if that supervisor you're looking into has actually published and what is their track record. So this is a bit of a checklist that you want to look into as far as supervisors are concerned. Now, the next thing you want to think about is how to build your team. Simple, okay? There is power in numbers. You want to have people around you, and a lot of people. So you want a team. So research, like I said, is not a silo project. Research is a team-based approach. And one great advantage of the team-based approach is the capacity it affords to recruit large sample of groups over a relatively short period of time. So then you have so you've got a lot of people that are recruiting a lot of people, then you are able to achieve what we call statistical power, that is necessary to confidently address important issues faced by patients and healthcare providers. And some of the issues that are faced actually are very, sometimes they're complex, that only a research team or network will have at its disposal the array of scientific disciplines, perspective, and approaches that are needed to solve the problem. Moreover, firm connection between research network and healthcare environments can provide an ideal context for knowledge translation, maximizes the chance that research finding will be applied to healthcare practice and decision making. I came across in the literature, a framework or a way to conduct research for which the goal is to identify an illness and reduce the burden of disease. And this actually framework was developed by the Pediatric Emergency Research of Canada. And this work group, what they did, they designed and they conducted research on two spheres. One of them was the knowledge translation loop, and the other one is a clinical research loop. And what they've seen is that to succeed as a network, PERC has had to co-bring together collaborators from variety of disciplines. So they had they focus on having researchers from at different levels, from trainees all the way to very senior accomplished researchers. And to be successful in the clinical research loop, the group has had to engage clinicians, statisticians, epidemiologists, and health economists. So in order for you to be able to, successfully conduct research, you need to be able to, this is actually a very interesting framework because, like I said, they looked at different ways of having this project conducted. And at every level of the project, they actually looked at what kind of people would they need. For example, if you're looking in the knowledge translation loop that you see, you have a strong partnership with leaders in the field. So qualitative research, cognitive psychologists, and medical sociologists. So really, depending on which loop you're into, then you want to perhaps look into what kind of research you will need. Now, conducting research in emergency medicine is actually very, very tough. Okay, because we are busy people and we don't really care about research. All we want to do is see patients and just go on and on and on. So actually, I found this paper, which actually looking at how do you engage emergency clinicians in emergency departments, and how do you engage them in actually doing research. And basically, they did semi-structured interviews in 37 Canadian adult and pediatric emergency departments, and they actually spoke to the researchers themselves. They didn't speak to the clinicians. And basically, they came up with recommendations to promote frontline clinician engagement in clinical research activity. And these are the recommendations they came up with. So point number one, the most important facilitator is the engagement of ED staff and the support of research as part of the institutional clinical, as part of the culture of the institution. So when you get hired, actually check what kind of environment you work in. Is this an area where a lot of papers are being generated? Because if you're in an area where if you're hired in this place, your job will be easier because the clinicians are mindful of the research. They've seen it before. A lot of papers are coming out of this institution. So when you actually apply for a job and research is important to you and you think this is something you want to pursue, think about an environment where research is actually is promoted and has already been done. So in the UAE, we don't have much big research centers, but I can say that, for example, Abu Dhabi is a bit more advanced as far as the research component is concerned, because we have Khalifa University. We've got a lot of academic centers actually that are more geared towards research, as opposed to going maybe in the Northern Emirates, which don't have that culture of research so much. It might be a bit of a trick. It might be a bit difficult to actually get your research going. Second thing is ensure that the local recruitment infrastructure actually exists. You need a research coordinator. Absolutely. If you're going to work and do research, right, you absolutely need a research coordinator, at least, okay, in the minimum, okay, because you need to be able to recruit patients. You need to have somebody who's going to be able to see who kind of patient is actually eligible for the study. So at a minimum, you need a research coordinator. In your ED, you should really identify what are and address the barriers prior to actually, conducting your research. So what are the barriers? Well, the best way to know is actually to ask. So what you should probably do, or what the literature suggests to do, is actually go speak to people and say, why are we not doing research? What are the barriers to research? And conduct a small pilot study and come see what people come up with. And the paper that I'm describing, a lot of people were saying is that we don't have time, and in settings where it's fee for service, so basically what money you make is what you kill. So really barrier was lack of time. So once you know the barriers and you ask for the barriers, then you know how to address them. Point number 4 is optimized data collection, material and strategies. What does that mean? Well, basically, what you want to do is actually, how is data collected, right? If the clinician has to fill out a form which would take them 20 minutes every time, then obviously they're not going to do it. We know we're busy people, we see patients around the clock. However, if, for example, the form that has to be filled out as part of your research product is attached to the EMR, it pops up every time they see a patient, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks and it's done, you will see that, data collection is going to be much easier. So you have to think about the data collection. This is one of the barriers that was identified, is that it's just too hard to fill out a form. We don't have time for this. So it's really important for you to think about this. All right. You want to engage your nursing staff and your other allied staff. Emergency medicine, as you know, is teamwork. It goes from the nurse to the social worker, the flow coordinators. So you want, like I said, there is power in the numbers. So what you really want is to be able to engage the staff that you have around, right? The other thing that is spoken about is you want to establish and leverage personal relationships. Okay, again, you want to have friends, so you want to talk about people. You want to make sure that people are on board. When do you address people? Staff meetings, academic days, right? Educational session. This is where you're going to start engaging people into your research. So really, in summation, if you're going to be in an department, first of all, you have to think about which setting you want to work in. If research is a goal, go to a setting where they've already done research, or they're versed in research, or we have people there that have published. So already you'll have allies to conduct your research. Make sure that you have the staff that's on board. Make sure you're able to have a research coordinator at the minimum, okay? In the sense where, because they will ensure that, patients are enrolled, they will ensure that the eligibility is actually, that people who are eligible actually enroll. So you really need allies when you want to conduct research. Which brings me to my next point. There is a trend towards having the team on board. There is a trend towards having a great you obviously need a great supervisor, but the other thing is actually there is a trend towards the involvement of the public, and more and more so you see a lot of research now, and a lot of grants are actually encouraging to have the public involvement. Why do you think that is? Well, where does it come from? It comes from the fact that now, it used to be that the doctor was in question. Whatever the doctor says, it goes. Nowadays, we're accountable. So the public wants to be aware and they want to participate in the research. So we have more accountability in healthcare. The public actually, are able now to make decisions. They're able to demand things and they're responsible for their health. And of course, the ownership. Nowadays, you walk into an emergency department and my patient will Google what they want from me, right? Because a lot of the people, like patients and the public, is actually taking ownership of their health. So the shift really from the clinician, the clinician's, domination, if you will, in terms of the care of the patient, now has shifted towards the public. So obviously the public wants to be involved in research. And you know what? It's not such a bad thing, right? Because when you actually involve the public in research, you're able to take somebody from the public, or the participants actually, and you're able to ask to tailor to the needs of the population. You actually gain their trust, of course, and of course, because research is based on the most part on participants and patients, then of course you need them. So you're actually increasing their compliance. So the next thing I want to talk about is, the next paper I want to address, actually, there is a systematic review that actually looked at patient engagement in research. And this paper looked at why is it important to actually have the public involved in your research? Well, because first of all, it increases your the credibility of your result, of course, because what happens is that you've got higher enrollment and you're able to retain people, right? If they're involved, okay, they'll enroll. So my mom will talk to your mom, who will talk to your mom, who will talk to your mom, right? Who might be eligible for the study or not. And of course, you know, for the most part, they will stick to the study if they're actually part of it. So this is crucial in a study, in any research development. You need the numbers, you need the patients, because the more numbers you have, like we spoke earlier, you've got more statistical power, right? So this is really important, actually, you know, and now this is the trend towards engaging the public. Sorry, I'm just, okay. So what are the best ways to identify a patient representative? How do you actually enroll the public into your research? Well, in general, most of the studies describe a convenience sample. So basically, whoever comes in is going to be part of the study. So most of the study will describe this convenience sampling as the method to identify patients for the engagement action research, attending clinics or other patient care facilities, or approach and ask to participate. Some patients are actually also volunteers, and very, very few patients are actually randomly selected. How do you engage them in designing and conducting research? Well, what the literature does describe is a variety of methods that are used to engage patients. And the most common one is focus group, interviews, surveys, and the most active form of engagement is actually having the public or the participants sit on the advisory council or attending actual research meetings, right? Have them come at research meeting. And this is actually a way you will engage people. Now, what are the observed benefits of patient engagements? I think this is self-explanatory, right? So it increases patient enrollment. Like I said, the more you engagement, and a lot of patients actually, you know, people, and they will, you know, recruit with you, right? And of course, it decreases what we call attrition, where basically your study doesn't shrink, it actually grows because you retain more and you recruit more. Now, what are the harms and barriers of patient engagement? Well, actually, most studies will report positive effects of engagement with the public. So there is a small number of potential harms or adverse effects, and usually because, you know, harms and barriers to engaging people is usually because people are frustrated, they don't want to wait, or because, you know, the training is just too long. People don't want to attend, they don't want to be engaged because, you know, they don't have the transport to get to the meetings. So, you know, these are actually challenges and barriers that you can actually address. And what is that? Okay. Now, there is something you can do actually to address those barriers, is actually spending time and building relationship with your public and the participants you've engaged, right? So if you actually sit down with them, talk to them, and speak to them about your research project, you will see that they become more engaged, and actually you can actually challenge those barriers and actually get them to be actually more involved. Now, I want to touch about other stakeholders, as part of your team building. Who do you want to reach out to? In Canada or in other places where they have community hospitals, now the trend is to go and get involved the community hospitals in the research because of the population they cater, and because of the richness in data collection. Actually, and you know, there's a huge body of evidence that suggests that hospitals participating in research have actually improved outcome. And in the UAE, it's the same notion as private versus public in the UAE. You will see that a lot of people, the numbers of people going to the private sector, the patients is enormous. And yet there's not much research going on because research is not profitable for those private institutions. So really, stakeholders in the UAE specifically would be maybe to get access to the private hospitals. Like I said, it can be a bit of a challenge because, like I said, usually research is not, the funding is not great for research. But one thing that we can say is that, you know, the more research we do, the better patient outcomes, and the better patient outcomes, the more money you're going to generate. So this is one thing has to think about, especially when it comes to the UAE, as the private sector has taken over healthcare. So this is a bit about team building, and now I'd like to change gears and speak about conflict of interest. So what is conflict of interest, right? So basically, a conflict of interest does exist when professional judgment concerning a primary interest, such as the patient welfare or the validity of the research, is influenced by secondary interest, usually is financial gain. Now, please be aware that perceptions of conflict of interest are as important as a conflict of interest. So basically, you've got a primary interest, right? And that primary interest can be influenced by a secondary interest. And most of the time, it's because of money, right? Money. So let's talk about the types of conflict of interest. So you've got the conflict of interest that you can actually measure, which are tangible. For the most part, it's money, shares in a company, future employment, and you've got the intangible ones, right? So things that are in your subconscious that are there that can create a conflict of interest. So for example, your desire for, you know, getting involved into politics, revenge. Some people, you know, have this personal vendetta that, you know, is actually clouding or having is a competing interest in terms of their research, religious superiority, and of course professional success, right? You want to get ahead, and it's a conflict of interest in terms of your research. And so why do we care about conflict of interest? Well, simply because we made an oath. First, do no harm, right? The more conflict of interest you are, the less transparent you become, the more harm you do, and the more coffins one has to carry, right? Disclosing conflict of interest promotes public confidence and trust in the scientific process and the credibility of published articles. Clinical and public health decisions distorted by financial conflict do harm, and they do kill. So you have to be very, very careful as far as conflict of interest is concerned. So who can be conflicted? Everyone. Researchers, sponsors, editors, oh my God, editors-in-chiefs, educators. So everyone can have a conflict. And are we obliged to report it? Well, as far as research articles are concerned, there is a section on full disclosure. If you look at the JAMA, for instance, they have a section on full disclosure. And that section is made to report conflict of interest to the public, right? Now, if a conflict is not there, or it's discovered at a later time, what happens is that a letter is publicly published by the author, right, and actually published in the article, right? The timeline, because a lot of times people don't know they have a conflict of interest, right? But the timeline that is established for most research article is 3 years. So if you've published something and you've had a conflict of interest, which is within the 3 years of the publication, then technically you're supposed to disclose that. That's as far as research articles are concerned. Now, as far as opinion and editorial articles are concerned, usually if there is a conflict of interest that is found, the article is not published. Makes sense, right? You can't give an opinion which is really not based on any kind of scientific methodology on a topic for which you have a conflict of interest. You can't give an opinion on the COVID vaccine if you own 50% of the shares of Pfizer. It doesn't make sense. So if there is an editorial or an opinion article, right, then it should not be published. And usually it's not published. Now that we've established what a conflict of interest is, we've established what types of conflicts of interest there are, we've established where they should be disclosed and how they should be disclosed. Now, how do you manage a conflict of interest on a research article? Well, really, it depends, right? So if the conflict of interest, right, is undisclosed, and the author actually agrees that there is a conflict of interest, then usually what happens is that the way to manage it is that there's a letter of explanation and a correction that is actually published. Now, where there is a conflict of interest which is actually undisclosed, and the journal actually finds out there's a conflict of interest, but the author disagrees, but usually there's an investigation which is started, right? Now, or if the third thing is that if you've got a conflict of interest which is undisclosed because of timing, well, like I said, most journals will have a 3-year policy on the disclosure of conflict of interest. Now, how do you manage conflict of interest in clinical trials? Well, you try to abstain, right? Because clinical trials are such usually when they're done properly, are such a robust piece of evidence that if you try to abstain, but realistically, it's almost impossible. But then the key to conflict of interest and to the management is transparency. You have to disclose to the IRB, you have to disclose to the public, you've got to disclose to the editors. And what you do is that during informed consent, right, what you try and actually do is get somebody else to take the consent for you, so that you don't have that. So for example, if I'm a rheumatologist, right, and I'm doing a clinical trial on a specific condition, I'll try to enroll patients. That's what I want to do, right? But I'll try. I have a conflict of interest if I am running a rheumatology clinic, and I feel like some of my patients actually can be enrolled in that study. Then in this case, I have a bit of a conflict of interest, my research versus my practice. So in this case, what you should do to avoid it and to manage this conflict of interest is get somebody else to take the consent. So you can actually approach the patients and get proper consent as far as enrolling them into your study is concerned. A lot of, in clinical trials, there is a cap on how much money that people should be taking as far as the financial gain is concerned. There is also, so there's this, when you publish a clinical trial, they usually are asking, there is a statement which is saying how much you got, from who did you get, what kind of investors did you get it from. So usually, there's something, it's actually disclosed. And really the best way to manage conflict of interest is actually disclosure. And of course, your ethical compass, right? If you feel like, there's a huge conflict of interest, and like I said, when you have conflict of interest and it's not managed and it's not transparent, and you have an ethical compass, you will make mistakes and you will kill people. You don't, for example, if you're developing this amazing drug, you think that, will be the best drug in treating septic shock, and you've got 50% share, or by the company which is actually making the drug. Then think about it. These are patients that are in septic shock that you will treat, and septic shock is a lethal condition. So really, if you don't have your ethical compass or your moral compass in the right place, you can actually kill people. So really, the best way to deal with conflict of interest is actually to disclose and be transparent about it. So, how do you try and avoid conflict of interest when you actually start to research? Well, really, you should agree to participate as an investigator in clinical trials only when actually relate to your scope of practice and you're an expert in the field, right? You usually should have adequate training in the conduct of research, and you should really only participate in protocols that you think are scientifically sound. You want to get the IRB on board, and you only want to start trials if it's actually IRB approved, that the IRB has reviewed the protocol, and that the research does not impose undue risks on the subjects, and the research conforms to governmental regulations. Again, informed consent should be taken by somebody else, especially when you're actually you're enrolling patient that you are treating. Okay, your financial compensation should be fair, right? You shouldn't become a millionaire because of financial gain from research trials, and not volume dependent, which means basically it's not you should get a set amount of money if you're going to get some financial incentive to do the research, but it shouldn't be volume dependent, which means that you don't want to say, listen, you enroll 10 patients, I'll give you $1,000, you enroll 20 patients, I'll give you $25,000, because clearly there's a big conflict of interest and you don't want that to happen, right? And disclose. Disclosure is probably the best safety net. You want to disclose any kind of the source of the funding, the nature of the funding, if you're getting any funding, the financial incentives, and it's really, really important for you to disclose, because transparency is really the best safety net. Now, why might ask, well, listen, if there's only really the ethical compass that protects us from a conflict of interest, and you know, some people have a different moral compass than others, then we have to ask ourselves, is there a law that protects the population and the people from conflict of interest when dealing with programs? Well, actually, in the United States, well, go figure, right? There is what we call the Open Payment Program, which is basically, it's under the Affordable Care Act, and what it aims to increase transparency of physician conflict of interest by providing information about medical industry payments to physician and teaching hospitals. So drug and device manufacturer companies, by law, must report payments to any licensed physician or teaching hospitals, or they actually, if they don't actually report that, they actually risk to be fined. So, basically, they should report if they're giving any money to licensed physicians or teaching hospitals. Now, the problem, it comes with journal editors, and this is the problem. This is where there's no law for that, and we know a lot of journal editors have conflict of interest, because as an editor, you publish. Your role is to actually tick the boxes and say, you know what, this is going for publication. If you have a big conflict of interest, or if you're getting a lot of money to publish an article, then there's a problem, and there is no law to protect the public from this. So with this, I'd like to conclude my talk actually by a few take-home points. So first of all, I'd like to say that team building starts with selecting the right supervisor, right? It takes time, and finding the right supervisor is a research on its own. But believe me, the time you invest in finding the right supervisor will save you a lot of grief. There is powers in numbers, and see big. You never know how big and how much your research project is going to take off. So involve the stakeholders, involve the community programs if you have any, involve the private hospitals, and set yourself up for excellence. If research is important to your career and you think you will make a living out of research, find the right place and find the right job. Go to a setting where they have papers published, they have research coordinators, they know what a paper looks like, because like I said, research is number dependent. It depends on the people that are going to recruit your patients, the people who are actually going to fill in the service, what the service already enroll patients. So you need the collaboration of a lot of staff, especially the ED staff. Nowadays, there's a trend towards public engagement. Like I said, it actually increases compliance, and it increases the compliance, increases the power of your research, and also it prevents from people dropping out of your research project. Building a network is very key. Start early and look forward. And conflict of interest is bound to happen in research. Whether it's tangible, whether it's not tangible, that's why you have to. Awareness is the first step. So keep your eyes open and your instinct very alert. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to the talk. And of course, I'll take any questions you might have. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Dr. Sabrina, for that informative lecture. Team building definitely is foundational to like a good research project. Teams that go through team building sessions definitely have this positive feeling that is manifested in certain ways, such as more trust for the team members, more satisfaction, more confidence. And I feel all of this helps them to communicate, coordinate, and manage their conflicts better, helping to accomplish the whole team's task in general. So with that, we are done with both our sessions for the day. We will now move on to our live Q&A session. So can I please request both our speakers, Dr. Suneel and Dr. Sabrina, to kindly switch on their videos. And for the audience, please feel free to type in your questions related to the topics that we discussed today in the chat box. And Anzal and I will be reading it out to the speakers. So we have our first question here. It's for Dr. Suneel. So Dr. Suneel, can I please request you to unmute? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yep. So the first question is for you, Dr. Suneel. A lot of residents tend to, and are sometimes sort of encouraged to see cookie cutter research topics. That is, like they find a research done really well somewhere in one country, and in order to externally validate or perhaps utilize a concrete methodology, they attempt to sort of recreate similar studies, like you mentioned in your presentation as well, just to get like an easy research done maybe, or for completion's sake. So while there are obvious many benefits to more research being done, externally validating these study results, what do you think are some pitfalls from a research trainee's perspective of actively seeking such copy-paste research methods or like redo research?
So let me, you can hear me okay, right? Everybody can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let me try to answer that from the perspective of benefits and harms, okay? So if you're early in your career, the benefits of doing some redo research is you've got the ideas there. Somebody else has done it in their workplace. There may be some value to redoing that research in your workplace to see if those results are reproducible and generalizable. You know, let's keep going with that. For example, the example that I presented with Ian Steele's clinical decision rules. Like those are the types of projects that need to be validated worldwide with different populations, physicians, nurses, students, and so on and so forth, to enhance their generalizability globally. And if you're an early career researcher and you haven't got a program of research yourself firmly crystallized in your head, that's a great place to start and learn processes around how to implement a program. What are the barriers and facilitators that Dr. Berdouk was talking about in your place that may not exist in the other place? So you're just kind of learning your own system, and you're using a methodology that you don't have to create and find or learn about where the problems are in that methodology as you're going through. Because if you cookie cutter it a little bit early in your career, that's okay. There's a value added to that. If you pick the right project, it does contribute to your workplace and to your career and everybody else's clinical care and all such. Later on, as you become more experienced and sophisticated with your own skills, your own experiences and all such things, and quite frankly, your interests are going to evolve over time. I mean, I can say how many times I've shifted gears over the years with regards to doing epidemiological research and critical appraisal, which I do like the last 15 years. But my clinical research, you know, in the 2000s, I was involved with a fair bit of sepsis bundle creation and implementation after early goal-directed therapy came out in 2001 and changed how sepsis care was done for a decade, right, in emergency medicine. So that's where I lived for about 6 or 7 years. And then I shifted gears. In the last few years, we're doing now a more skin and soft tissue infection care and quality improvement stuff, because when I moved to a new hospital system to start the research program there, that was a priority for our clinical group and for the chiefs there, right? You know, I've always had an interest, for example, in ED management of low back pain. And just because it's such a common problem and the treatments of it are poor and the investigations of it are wasteful, red flags and all that other stuff. So this is kind of where things meander along, and you know, when opportunities pop up, you grab them when you can, or you create your own when you're ready. The other comment I made about COVID-19, I will say is, this is not my first pandemic. This is probably my fourth or fifth, but I swore to myself in 2003 when SARS came, and I was in the middle of my ClinEpi master's training. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to do projects around SARS in 2003. And then when I finished my master's in 2005, I swore to myself, if there was ever another pandemic in the world during my career, I would not miss my opportunity to do research in that. So we have a series of projects ready to go this year. At least in North America, in Canada, we're in the middle of our fourth wave right now, okay, for COVID, and then Delta came last fall and spring, and now we're into Omicron. I'm sure all of you have the same experiences. So we have a series of projects ready to go doing a wave by wave analysis. And it's quite easy because it's administrative data on ED utilization, volumes, CTAS distributions, or ESI, or whatever triage system you use, length of stay, admission rates, discharge rates. We have all that's easy research to do. Like what changed before COVID, and then COVID wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4. For example, in our environment, we had a lot of volumes fall off like amazingly in wave 1 and 2 because there was a lot of fear about people coming to the hospital because they thought they'd catch COVID there. It's like, it's the safest place in the country to be. I mean, there's so much infection control we have there. Anyway, and I think that fear fell off in wave 2 and wave 3, and our volumes started to come back and all such thing. The other thing that happened a lot in this particular pandemic that I've watched the literature on that I've never seen before and didn't happen in SARS is there was a huge drop off in the number of patients coming for STEMI and stroke, and they were missing their reperfusion windows significantly. And I've never seen that before. And I think it was the fear of coming to the hospital that even you're in the middle of a STEMI and you should be going to cath lab or getting lysis, or same thing with strokes, that fell off quite a bit. So there's a literature on that, and this is generational type of research. You can say, look, that means that, if it turns out that that's a true thing, that's an issue around public messaging, saying if you're having a heart attack, please still come to the hospital. You don't have to stay away because of COVID. Or if you're having an acute stroke, there's time-dependent emergency treatments you need to get, and you should still come regardless of your COVID fears or concerns or whatever. So these are the kinds of things that eventually, as your career moves along, you see the opportunities and you just grab them. And then if you shift gears, you shift gears. But if you have your own program of research like Ian Steele's group does, and this has been going, they've been doing this for 25, 30 years. They're really good at it. Then obviously you can keep that running in the background and keep going as well. And if a new thing drops into your lap, like COVID-based research, do that too. If your group is big enough, recruit your people. Sabrina talked about engaging faculty members, sort of sparking interest in them. And we have junior faculty now who've never done research, and, they're getting involved with some of these projects, which is good for all of us, right? Sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I hope that sort of answers your question a little bit.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sure.
So thank you, Dr. Suneel. I think to an extent, my takeaway from that is, even if you do that sort of redo research or wherever you start from, as long as you do start and you create a system that follows, you're probably going to end up evolving that system eventually. So
Sure.
There's always good to be had. Whereas, I don't think any experience is bad experience. There might be less experience that you get from methodology by copy pasting, but maybe perhaps something that you take away from that and then make it personalized to your research journey, so to speak. So thank you very much for that answer. The next one's for Dr. Sabrina. And this is again in regards to our lecture on team building. So I think this kind of speaks to me as well. So a lot of times, it's either through maligned interests or sometimes failure to meet expectations, you end up with team members that are the equivalent of, for lack of a better word, dead weight on the team. So a lot of the time, it's a little bit hard to sort of confront these negative emotions that sometimes are circulating in the air, and some certain passions are sort of at play as well. Is there, in your opinion or in your experience per se, an effective way to confront and, if need be, break up with an ineffective research team member?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry, my voice is a bit low. I'm just recovering from a nasty flu. You can hear me properly, yeah?
Yes, we can. I hope you're feeling better soon.
Oh my God, we all have COVID. It's part of the, it's part of the trend now. Yeah, so to answer your question, actually, you know what? It's a very valid point, and it's really frustrating when basically you're saying, what if people are not pulling their weight? And what do you do about that? So, I don't like, I used to be, and I'll tell you from experience, I used to be, you know what, you're not pulling your weight. Then, you go ahead with the confrontation. It doesn't resolve anything. People get frustrated. It creates tension, and, people resent and whatnot. So now what I do when I feel like, somebody's not pulling their weight, I usually set up, the best way to avoid that really, the best way to approach that is to actually avoid it, in the sense where when you actually set up a research team and a research project, you want to be as honest and as transparent as possible. And you want to establish from the get-go as much as possible, what is the responsibility of everybody, right? Because if people are, because, you can't, I look at it as a chain, every little piece of chain, right? Actually hold the chain together. So the moment one breaks, then the chain falls apart. So when you actually set up your team, and then we can talk about team meetings, is from the get-go say, this is the layout of the research project. These are the different tasks that need to be done, especially at the beginning when you have a skeleton of what you want to achieve. And then what you can do is actually responsibilize people and say, if you're responsible for part A, and you're responsible for part B, then nobody's going to do your part. If you don't do it, part A is not going to be done. And what you're going to find is that people who actually, when you responsibilize people, they feel like they're actually part of the. Sorry, sorry, I have a guest. It's supposed to be in bed, but obviously. Hi. Hello, bonjour.
That's our special guest for the evening.
Yes, it's like the BBC where they had that kid come in. So yeah, so going back to the end. Doing, and you will see that people actually will want to collaborate and say, you know what, I'm part of this project. I have to pull my weight, or this is going to fail. So you start with that. Subsequently, if you feel like, they're still, not pulling their weight, or somebody's not pulling the weight, then you just address it and say, listen, part A is supposed to be done. If part A is not going to get done, we cannot get into part B. How can we address that? You talk to people. And a lot of people will say, well, actually, they will feel that they have a specific task they have to do. They will feel important, and they will feel like they want to contribute. And if that doesn't work, then in this case, you say, listen, we're missing one of the parts of the research project. What do we do? It's simple. And at this one, then you have to start being a bit more assertive. If you don't get part of the research project that you're supposed to be doing, then you say, you know what should we do? And this is supposed to come up with a solution. And usually what I do is that if they don't come up with a solution, I say, you know what, no problem. We can put you in the acknowledgement section, and that's a bit radical. Or your name will not get published, and we have to be fair because everybody's pulling their weight, and now your task is going to have to be distributed. So no problem, it's not an issue. Things happen and you can't contribute, no problem. Then in this case, then your name might go into the acknowledgement section as opposed to being an author on the paper. So that's it's really a step-by-step kind of approach. I don't know if Suneel wants to add on to that, or he's got better approach.
I would love to add to that. I think those are fantastic points. I agree with everything you just said right now, Sabrina. There's a few tricks of the trade that, again, the longer you do this, and if you work with groups, this works 10 to well. If you have a big and complicated project that is going to spin off a lot of papers, then what you can actually do is you can, speaking to Sabrina's idea of who has what responsibility for what part of the project, is if there's going to be spin-off papers that take care of a specific aspect of a project, a subgroup analysis, an economic evaluation, or whatever the case may be, what you can do is offer them the first authorship on that part. And that, they're contributing to the greater good, like the master paper, of course, but then they get the leader authorship on their own thing too. And if that's something that motivates them, then they'll deliver on their contributions usually, and that tends to work. And Ian is a master of this kind of stuff. We try and do these things right now with our group, but we're not yet at those levels, but we will be hopefully in a couple of years. The challenge with like I said, motivating somebody to keep up with their contributions also is, one argument one can make that Sabrina did bring up about authorship is the rules of authorship are very clear. And they are defined through the ICJME, International Consensus of Journal Medical Editors. and the contributions have to be very explicitly and delivered. And what we do in our projects is when we plan our projects, we talk about the publication at the end. We have to take care of that right at the beginning. And we say, okay, this person's gonna be lead author, this one's gonna be anchor author, this is the order. And if you make these contributions, you earn an authorship. And we say, these are the journal standards, that's not us. And if you don't, you get in the acknowledgements like Sabrina mentioned, or whatever the case may be, right? So it's not really on you as the project leader to dangle or withdraw authorships. You just appeal to a higher authority and say, these are the rules of international publishing. And if your target journal ascribes to those ICJME standards, then you tell your group, everybody has to contribute to become an author. If not, you're an acknowledged a contributor, and that's that. The final nugget I will offer with regards to project planning and project management, especially if you're supervising multiple projects, is my personal practice is this. I have what I call my A-level projects, which cannot fail. And as such, I'm very selective about who I invite. And I know in my head, these people will deliver and guarantee. Then I have a series of what's called B projects, which if they get done, great. If they don't, okay. And then I invite people in, or, this is going to sound terrible. I apologize for this, but this is where sometimes I land a lot of my students and trainees who email me out of the blue and say, hey, I need a research project because I want to apply to residency and I want to do this. And I have 8 months to do it, but I've only got 2 days a week to dedicate to this. And I'm on rotation and I can't. It's like, really? You're coming to me with this and then you're laying all these conditions and restrictions on me? Good luck with that, right? Because, I'm being blunt. Right? I mean, maybe Sabrina, you've had these experiences, or some of the other faculty have experienced. It's like, your spider sense starts to tingle saying, this person's not going to deliver. So I can't put them on an A project because I can't trust that because this is critical important for our hospital or for me or for my career or whatever it is. And I cannot gamble with the failure of those projects because they're just too important. So I don't recruit those types of people into those projects. And I sort of offer my sort of side projects to them. And if they deliver, wonderful, I'm happy and they're happy, they get their publications. I give them all the first authorships on those. I don't care about that. I'm happy to go in the tail position as a senior investigator, and great, mission accomplished. And if they don't, I didn't lose anything, right? Over my core research program. I know it sounds a little harsh, and from my personal experience, there's a couple times that I've been asked to withdraw from a research group and stuff because I wasn't delivering on my thing because of various competing interests or life circumstances or whatever. So I did, I said, look, I can't deliver what you want to deliver. And you have asked me that, most project leaders are nice about it. They said, look, you're just not towing your weight. Are you still interested? I think Sabrina was nice. It's the soft hammer, the velvet glove approach, which is you invite them to say, can you do the work or not? And if not, do you feel you'd be better off doing something else? Or can we bring somebody else in to take over for you, or some pleasant way of us saying we would like to fire you, but we would like you to resign first if you can. You know what I mean? And it happens,
Yeah.
The hardest thing to learn when you're in your early years is this, and it took me a while, and I was told this at the beginning of my research career, the hardest thing to learn is how to say no. Like, no, I can't help you with this project right now because I don't have the time and the ability. Because you always want to say yes. It's like, do you want to be a journal reviewer? Yes, I want to be a journal reviewer and an editor and a presenter and a project developer. Before you know it, you're all over the place and you're doing nothing well because you're doing too many things poorly and you just don't have the time. I don't know, Sabrina, if you have thoughts on that.
True. I think the key from this is to, like, from the start itself, assign roles. Like we run any codes, assign roles, know your responsibilities, and then get back to the leader with whatever has been done. And then like you said, like, be transparent with what that member has to offer, and sort of is that member completing the task or not. So thank you, Dr. Suneel and Dr. Sabrina, for that. We have.
I just would like to add something, especially for juniors, because I know this, because for people who are just starting off the research, and Suneel is right, we have this FOMO syndrome, which is the fear of missing out. Okay, I think we're all guilty of that as emerge docs. We just want to be involved in everything and have our multiple tentacles in different places and whatnot. And we sometimes tend to take a lot on our plate, especially when we're starting, because we feel like we want to take it all, we want to rule the world and whatnot. So it's very important, I think, to be aware of what your limitations are as an individual. And really, because we tend to be overachievers and think that, and who's responding and who's got a project to manage, it's not fair. So you really have to be fair to the people in front of you, fair to the team. And for some reason, if you're going to lead a project, and as a leader, you'd be amazed at how much, if the power of responsibilizing people has. Because really, you have to, as a trait of a good leader really is to engage people, not to use them as vehicles, not to use them as a means to an end, but really to say you're a part of it, you're an integral part of it, and you will see that amazingly a lot of people will deliver initially. Now, if you don't get to that, like Suneel said, you kind of have to, to take the hammer and say, listen, it's not working out. We have to work some other way. But really, you can't be afraid of saying no. You can't be afraid of, stepping up. And there's really nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, it is a project that's dear to your heart.
Yeah, true. Thank you, Dr. Sabrina. We have one more question for Dr. Suneel. So it goes like, a lot of residency programs employ a mandatory research project, like as a requirement for project completion, right? So what in your mind are some pros and cons to these, and how would these projects be sort of best optimized to encourage future research?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's acknowledge for sure that not everybody is going to become a great researcher in their career. That's just a given. There's a few people who are going to gravitate into these areas because they're interested in it and they like it. It fascinates them, and that's all. But most residency programs, their job is not to turn out researchers. Their job is to turn out good clinical emergency physicians who are going to go out and take care of patients in your communities and in your regions and jurisdictions. The research thing is an extra bonus. Having said that, yes, in Canada and the United States, all of the residency programs do have a required research component to them. The key to being successful with your project is to, again, find a topic you're interested in. You can deliver in your residency time. I did the 5-year Royal College training program in Hamilton at McMaster, so I had time to do projects a year at a time, or a couple of years at a time, and what have you. There are other training programs where you may only have a year, so you have to pick a project that's nice and tight and get it done during that time. Again, something you care about or you're interested in, or it may pave the road to your future if you're going to be hired in those communities or whatever the case may be. I would submit that the one area that everybody can always succeed in, even if you don't like doing research, is quality improvement. Okay, the quality improvement will always be in your career. It is generally an expectation that you participate in some part of quality improvement and improving clinical care in your departments, whether it's formalized versus unformalized. If you have some formal skills in quality improvement, you'll do it better. And whether you publish your work or not, it doesn't really matter if that's not what you care about. But at least how you do your processes in the hospital, that will be with you forever. It doesn't matter where you work.
Yeah.
Whether you lead the projects, you follow the projects. I can tell you, in the spring of 2020, when we were all in COVID wave 1 lockdowns, you go to work, you go home, you go to the grocery store once a week, and that's it. That's all we did for many weeks, right? Because everything else was locked down because of the outbreaks. So for example, I did a 2-week quality improvement course online. It wasn't, well, I got it done in 2 weeks, but it was like 14, 15 modules through what's called the IHI, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. It was fantastic. Actually, it was a great course. And I learned a lot of really good stuff about quality improvement. They give you all the tools about how to do quality improvement projects going forward. We started using their materials and other training materials going forward, because our institution is actually predicated on doing quality improvement. So when I did it, and then I told some of my junior faculty and some of the other people in Niagara, I said, this is a great way to get some CME credits and get another certificate in your bank. And then you'll know what we're doing in terms of quality improvement going forward. So we got a lot of people to do it. and it worked out very well. And I think it's going to serve our group quite well for the next few years as we build new quality improvement projects, because we're at the process now. We have a template of what's the next topic we're going to hang on this template. Oh, we're going to improve chest pain, PE management. Okay. But we have a template of how we would do it because we've already done it now a few times, and on it goes. You will do that for the rest of your lives. So if that's an area of research, like if you don't want to do classic research like literature reviews, randomized trials and that kind of stuff, that's fine. Don't. But the clinical aspects of quality improvement will be with you forever. So if that's if you have to do research per se of some nature, QI is an excellent place to land. And Anzal or Sania, remind me, we may have a session on this in the curriculum in the future, and we can talk about concepts.
There's a subtopic on quality improvement specifically, but I think what you're saying sort of holds true, practically speaking, as well. A lot of people who want to do the, I wouldn't say easy, but more practical side of what an institution requires. And a lot of the times it's mandated by the, your quality and safety departments, et cetera, is continuous cycles of quality improvement. And it is very, very applicable to practice. So it does tend to get, and that is starting to creep in a lot around the globe, as I would imagine as well. So just to wrap things up, we're actually approaching the end of our module 1. We have just under 1 minute 45 seconds for any questions between the speakers. That doesn't give us a lot of time, but any comments, questions between yourselves?
There is one, if I can interrupt for a second, Zal. There's a question in the box from Hala, which is, what's the value of being the second on the list of authors? Well, it means that you've made a significant contribution. It depends how many authors there are on the paper, but if you're second out of 20, that's pretty good. If you're second out of 3, then okay. I mean, let's be blunt. The best position is first, but you have to earn that. The second most important is usually the anchor position. So who's the senior office, the senior project manager, investigators, and whatever. And then based on contributions, it goes 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, I would submit that that is something you should agree upon ahead of time, not at the end of the project when you're writing the manuscript and then having a big cat fight about who's going to be in what position. That should be agreed upon ahead of time. Sabrina, I don't know if you have other thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree with you. I think it has to be agreed upon. And to be honest with you, I don't know about you, but when I actually read an article, when I look at a research article, we know there's a rank, there's a hierarchy and whatnot, but being first, second, third author, it's, I don't know. I don't see much of a difference. And, you're published, your name is there. Right. If your name is on the acknowledgement section, is a different story. Yeah. But if you're like first, second, third, fourth author, really, I don't think it makes a huge difference. So, at the end of the day, you're published and your name is there. And, when you're looking for, again, you're PubMeding, if you put in your name there, it should appear. So at the end of the day,
agree with all of that. When it comes to progress and promotion with your university and your contributions for your annual reviews and all such things, when you've got your name on peer-reviewed publications in credible journals, it's all good. I mean, I've been lucky a few times in my life to work with some other people, and I've landed in BMJ like 2 or 3 times. Now, granted, I'm like 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever, like infinity -1. But as long as you're on the front page and that top group where your name is somewhere scattered in there, that's a good thing. Like I'll take 10th author on a BMJ or a Lancet or a New England paper any day than a first author in some obscure little journal elsewhere. Because as a career builder, it's far more impactful, right? Like, look, impact factors for journals matter. We talk about these things when we do our project planning. Like, say, where are we going to finally land this? We're probably doing a topic on a session on publication later, right? So we can talk about that later. But
yes,
I mean, to tie it up in a little bit, it helps to be part of a team, and that team has to function effectively, which is lo and behold the theme of our discussions today. So wrapping that up from there, I'm just going to address the obvious questions that a couple of people have been having. Is where they're going to go for the pre and post module quiz, where can they get the information. So for the lack of a better explanation, they can use the link that I've sent in for the website of ECREM to answer any of their questions that they need. And they can find more information about that. Their CME is going to be separate to this specific event, which is going to be explained to you guys in post. You'll be sent links in your emails and WhatsApps and whatnot. So I'm going to hand things over to Sania to wrap up. Thank you from my side to Dr. Suneel and Dr. Sabrina for 2 amazing lectures. I definitely learned something, so I hope it was helpful to a lot of the other audience out there as well. Dr. Sania, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Anzal. So on behalf of the entire team of ECREM, I would like to thank both our speakers for their time, cooperation, and valued contribution to this academic initiative. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tasneem, our technical editor, for working your magic behind the scenes. And thank you to each and every member of the audience for your participation. We hope this module will help open vital conversations around, surrounding research topics, mentorship, team building, and whatnot. So see you all next month in Feb with module number 2 of the Research Workplan with 2 new speakers, where we shall discuss the basics of writing a good P-code question and conducting a literature review. So thank you all for joining us today. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you for having us,
Hey,
and great initiative, guys.
Pleasure. Very good.
Thank you. We'll see you around. Keep safe, guys.
Yep. Agreed.
Thank you.